In 1995, in the small town of Ashwood, the air smelled of damp earth and pine after a long night of rain. It was the kind of town where everybody knew each other, where the high school football team's victories were front-page news, and where parents left their doors unlocked without fear. It was a quiet place, almost too quiet, the kind of place where you wouldn't expect darkness to creep in. But sometimes, it's in the quietest towns that the loudest tragedies are born. But before we dive into the full part of the story, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and also follow for more interesting stories to come. 16-year-old Daniel Carter was sitting on the back porch of his best friend's house, swinging his legs lazily against the wooden steps. His best friend, Michael Harris, was inside grabbing sodas from the fridge. They'd been inseparable since 3rd grade, two boys who found each other on the playground and never let go. Daniel was a quieter one, thoughtful and cautious, while Michael was bold, impulsive, the kind of boy who could charm a teacher and talk his way out of almost anything. Together, they balanced each other, or at least that's how it always seemed. When Michael came back with 2 cans of Coke, he tossed one to Daniel and plopped down beside him. The boys had grown up together through scraped knees, shared secrets, first crushes, and countless summer nights. Daniel trusted Michael more than anyone in the world. If someone had told him then that this trust would one day shatter in the most violent way imaginable, he would have laughed it off. That summer of 1995 was their last golden season of boyhood. They were about to start their junior year of high school, both dreaming of leaving Ashwood behind for bigger lives. Daniel wanted to be a writer, already scribbling stories in the worn notebook he carried everywhere. Michael dreamed of making money, fast and easy. "I don't care how," he often said with a grin, "as long as I get out of this dead-end town." But cracks had begun to form. Daniel noticed things, subtle things. Michael's temper was sharper than it used to be. His smile sometimes edged with something cruel. He'd gotten into fights at school, and though he laughed them off, Daniel couldn't shake the unease in his stomach. There were moments, fleeting but undeniable, when Michael's eyes went cold, as if he were watching the world from a place far away. One night in late August, they sat at the edge of Miller's Creek, skipping rocks across the dark water. The moon was high, painting the surface in silver ripples. Michael leaned back on his elbows, a cigarette dangling from his lips, stolen from his father's pack. You ever think about what it'd be like to just end someone? Michael asked suddenly, his voice casual, as though he were talking about the weather. Daniel froze, a stone clutched in his palm. He laughed nervously, waiting for the punchline, but Michael's face was serious. "I mean it," Michael continued, his eyes fixed on the water. "Like, you've got the power to take a life, to decide if someone gets to keep breathing or not. Doesn't that make you curious?" Daniel shook his head quickly. "No, man, that's messed up. You can't just say stuff like that." Michael smirked, flicking his cigarette into the creek. "Relax. I'm just talking. You take everything too seriously." But Daniel couldn't shake the chill that crawled up his spine. He tried to tell himself it was just one of Michael's stupid comments, another attempt to shock him. Still, something about the way he'd said it, so calm, so certain, stuck with him. School started in September, and life settled into its familiar rhythm. Homework, football games, Friday nights at the diner. Michael was the same as ever in front of their friends, loud, reckless, always the center of attention. But when it was just the two of them, Daniel noticed more of those unsettling moments. Like the time Michael confessed he'd stolen cash from his uncle's wallet and laughed about how easy it had been. Or the way he'd stared too long at a stray dog by the road before whispering under his breath, "No one would even care if it disappeared." Daniel wanted to confront him, to ask what was happening, but the words stuck in his throat. They'd been friends for too long. You didn't accuse your best friend of being dangerous. You didn't let fear outweigh loyalty. Then came October 14th, the night that would change everything. It was supposed to be another harmless weekend adventure. Michael had talked Daniel into sneaking out late to explore the old abandoned mill on the edge of town. "Come on," Michael had said, grinning as always. "We'll scare the crap out of ourselves, maybe find some treasure. You'll write about it in your little notebook." Daniel almost said no. His gut told him not to go. But loyalty, blind, stubborn loyalty, made him follow. The mill was a hulking, rotting skeleton of wood and iron, its windows shattered, its walls covered in graffiti. The boys' flashlights cut narrow beams through the darkness, dust swirling in the air. They laughed nervously, daring each other to climb high into the creaking rafters. That's when they heard it, a sound from the shadows, a shuffling step, followed by a low groan. Daniel's blood ran cold, but Michael's grin only widened. They weren't alone. A man stumbled into the dim light, his clothes filthy, his beard overgrown. He looked like one of the town's drifters, the kind who passed through and slept wherever they could. His eyes were glassy, his voice hoarse. "What are you boys doing here?" Daniel started to stammer an apology, but Michael stepped forward, fearless, just looking around. "This place is a dump. You live here or something?" The man muttered something, swaying on his feet. He looked sick, fragile. Daniel tugged at Michael's arm, whispering, "Let's just go." But Michael didn't move. His eyes had that same cold glint Daniel had seen before. And then, in one swift motion that Daniel would replay in his nightmares for years, Michael picked up a rusted metal pipe from the ground and swung it. The sound of impact was wet and final. The man collapsed, groaning once before going still. Daniel screamed, dropping his flashlight, the beam rolling across the floor. "What the hell, Michael? What did you do?" Michael stood over the man, breathing heavily, the pipe still in his hands. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then, slowly, he turned to Daniel, his face expressionless. "Now you know," Michael said quietly. "Now you've seen." Daniel's heart pounded in his chest, his legs shaking beneath him. He wanted to run, to get as far away as possible, but Michael's stare held him frozen in place. It was in that moment that Daniel realized something he'd never allowed himself to believe. His best friend, the boy he'd trusted all his life, was a killer, and Michael had no intention of letting him walk away unchanged. Daniel's chest heaved as he stared at the man sprawled on the filthy mill floor, the broken body bathed in the shaky glow of the fallen flashlight. The groan that had followed the blow was gone now, leaving behind a silence so heavy it pressed against Daniel's skull. He wanted to scream, to cry, to run, but he couldn't move. His best friend stood only a few feet away, pipe in hand, eyes dark and unblinking. "Michael," Daniel whispered, his voice hoarse. He's dead." Michael tilted his head, like he was considering the words. Then, calmly, almost disturbingly casual, he wiped the rusty pipe against his jeans. He was nothing, just a bum. No one's gonna miss him. Daniel's stomach lurched, while burning at the back of his throat. "What the hell is wrong with you? We have to call the police. We can't just..." Michael snapped his gaze toward him, and in that instant, Daniel felt like prey caught in the eyes of a predator. "Shut up," he said sharply. "You think you can just call the cops? You were here too. They'll think you helped. You'll go down with me." The words cut deep because Daniel knew, in the twisted way the world worked, there was truth in them. His fingerprints were on everything in this mill. His presence tied him to the scene. If Michael said Daniel was involved, who would believe otherwise? Michael stepped closer, lowering his voice to a near whisper. "You're not telling anyone. You're gonna keep your mouth shut, because we're in this together now. That's what best friends do." Daniel backed away, shaking his head. No, this isn't friendship. This is insane." Michael smirked, though his eyes remained cold. "You'll see. One day, you'll thank me. This world's about power, Daniel. And tonight, you saw what it feels like to hold it. But Daniel didn't feel powerful. He felt broken. They dragged the man's body deeper into the mill, Michael taking charge while Daniel's hand shook uncontrollably. Michael shoved a few rotting boards aside, creating a shallow pit among the debris, and they left the man there, covering him with old tops and loose planks. Daniel wanted to run, to scream for help, but he followed every order, terrified of what Michael might do if he disobeyed. When they finally stepped back into the cool October night, Daniel's clothes smelled of rust and dust and something metallic that he knew was blood. His mind screamed to confess, to run to his parents, to make it right. But Michael walked beside him, calm and almost cheerful, and Daniel understood. Michael wasn't afraid. He wasn't ashamed. He had crossed the line and left Daniel stranded on the other side. The days that followed blurred into a nightmare. At school, Michael acted like nothing had happened. He laughed in the hallways, flirted with girls, cracked jokes in class. To anyone else, he was the same old Michael Harris. But Daniel saw the difference. He saw how Michael's smile lingered a second too long, how his eyes occasionally flicked to him with a warning that didn't need words. Say nothing. Daniel barely slept. Every creak of the house at night jolted him awake, convinced the police were at the door, or worse, that Michael was standing in his room with that pipe again. He wrote furiously in his notebook, not stories anymore, but confessions he couldn't say out loud. He wrote about the man in the mill, about Michael's words, about the fear that wrapped itself around his throat. It was the only way to keep himself from unraveling. But the weight grew heavier with each passing day. 2 weeks later, the town buzzed with whispers. A drifter had been reported missing, the same man Daniel and Michael had encountered. He wasn't from Ashwood, no family nearby, but people noticed when someone vanished. The sheriff mentioned it casually at the diner, said he was probably just moving along to another town. Daniel sat at a booth with Michael when the words reached them, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure everyone could hear. Michael only smirked, stirring his soda with a straw. "See? Nobody cares," he murmured to Daniel when no one else could hear. "Told you." Daniel wanted to scream. He wanted to grab the sheriff, drag him to the mill, show him the truth. But he sat frozen, paralyzed by fear, loyalty, and the terrible knowledge that his best friend was no longer the boy he once knew. Halloween arrived, and with it, another test. Michael loved the holiday, always had. He wore a cheap vampire cape to school, fangs tucked in his pocket, and spent the day planning pranks. That night, he showed up at Daniel's window, grinning like the devil himself. "Come on," he whispered. "Got something better than candy this year." Daniel hesitated, but when Michael tapped the glass again, his pulse racing with that same unspoken threat, he climbed out. They wandered the back streets of Ashwood, their breath visible in the chilly night air. Michael carried a duffel bag Daniel hadn't noticed until he set it down in an alleyway behind the grocery store. From it, he pulled spray paint, eggs, a crowbar. "We're not hurting anyone," Michael said with a wink. "Just having some fun." But Daniel knew better. He saw the gleam in Michael's eyes, the same gleam he'd seen at the mill. They vandalized cars, shattered a streetlight, broke into the storage shed behind the diner. Michael laughed like it was the best night of his life, while Daniel followed, numb and hollow. When they finally sat beneath the trees at the edge of town, Daniel couldn't hold it in anymore. "Why are you doing this?" he whispered. Why are you turning into this person?" Michael chuckled, tossing an egg into the darkness. "Turning into? Danny, this is who I've always been. You just didn't see it before." Daniel's throat tightened. He realized then that his friend wasn't changing. He was revealing himself. And Daniel was trapped, bound to a murderer by secrets too heavy to share. That night, when he returned home and stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, Daniel barely recognized himself. His eyes were hollow, his hands trembling. He had become a ghost of the boy he once was, and Michael knew it. Michael liked it. The weeks dragged on, winter creeping into Ashwood. But one December night, as the snow fell in heavy sheets, everything reached a breaking point. Daniel came home to find Michael waiting on his porch, his grin sharper than ever. "Got a job for us tonight," Michael said, his voice low. "Something bigger, something real." Daniel's stomach turned. He knew, deep down, what Michael meant before he even said it. This wasn't about vandalism anymore. This wasn't about some nameless drifter in a forgotten mill. Michael wanted another kill. And this time, Daniel knew he wouldn't be able to walk away without making a choice between the loyalty of a lifetime and the terror of what his best friend had become. Snowflakes spun like ghosts in the streetlight glow as Daniel stared at Michael on the porch. The grin on Michael's face cut through the cold night, sharp and hungry. "What do you mean, something real?" Daniel asked, though his voice shook, though he already knew. Michael stepped closer, brushing snow from his jacket. "I mean someone who matters this time. Not some nameless nobody in an abandoned mill. Someone people actually notice." He paused, eyes gleaming. "Power, Danny, that's how you make them respect you. That's how you stop being invisible." Daniel's chest tightened until he could hardly breathe. "You're talking about murder." Michael laughed, low and mocking. "Murder, kill, whatever you want to call it. You were there the first time. You saw what it does. Don't lie. Part of you felt it too." Daniel shook his head violently. "No, I hated it. I hate you for it." For a moment, silence hung between them, thick as the snow blanketing Ashwood's quiet streets. Then Michael's smile faded into something colder. "Careful, Danny. Don't forget who you're talking to." Fear rooted Daniel to the porch. His best friend, the boy he'd shared lunches with, the boy he'd whispered secrets to under the stars, was gone. In his place stewed something hollow, something dangerous. "Who?" Daniel whispered finally, afraid to ask but knowing he had to. Michael's grin returned, slow and deliberate. "Mr. Willard." Daniel's heart lurched. Mr. Willard was a history teacher. Kind, patient, the sort of man who stayed after school to help students with essays, who quietly slipped kids a few dollars for lunch if they were short. He wasn't rich, wasn't powerful, but he was respected, beloved, even. "You've lost your mind," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "We're not doing this. I'm not doing this." Michael stepped forward until he was only inches away. Snow clung to his dark hair, melted on his cheeks. His eyes burned with something feral. "Yes, you are. Because if you don't, everyone's gonna know. About the mill, about the drifter, about you." Daniel's knees went weak. It wasn't just blackmail. It was a death sentence if he refused. That night, Daniel barely slept. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his notebook open beside him. He scribbled pages of desperate words. "I'm not like him. I didn't want this. If anyone finds this, please believe me." His pen tore through the paper as tears blurred his vision. He knew he had to make a choice, betray Michael and risk everything, or follow him into the abyss. The next evening, Michael showed up again, duffel bag in hand. "Tonight," he said simply. Daniel followed, because fear chained him tighter than any rope. The plan was crude but terrifying in its simplicity. Mr. Willard stayed late at the school most nights, grading papers in his dimly lit classroom. The building would be quiet, the halls deserted. Michael wanted to corner him in the parking lot. "Make it look like some junkie gone wrong," he said with a smirk. Daniel walked beside him through the snow, every step heavy as lead. His mind screamed for him to run, to find the nearest payphone, to confess everything. But Michael's presence at his side, steady and watchful, held him silent. When they reached the school, the lot was nearly empty, the building looming like a black shadow against the night sky. A single car sat under the lamplight, Mr. Willard's. Daniel's breath fogged in the air as they crouched behind a dumpster, waiting. Minutes dragged like hours. Then, finally, Mr. Willard emerged, his arms full of books, his shoulders hunched against the cold. He moved slowly toward his car, keys jingling in his hand. Michael's grip tightened around the crowbar he'd pulled from bag. He leaned close to Daniel, whispering, "This is it. Don't freeze on me." Daniel's heart pounded so violently he thought it would burst from his chest. He could see Mr. Willard's face in the light, tired, unaware, human. And in that moment, Daniel knew he couldn't let it happen. He turned to Michael, his voice trembling. "I'm not doing this." Michael's eyes narrowed, fury flashing. "Yes, you are." No, Daniel's voice cracked but grew stronger. "I'm done. I'm not covering for you anymore. You're sick, Michael. You're sick, and I won't let you drag me down with you." Michael's expression hardened into something monstrous. He raised the crowbar, his voice low and venomous. "Then you're just another problem I have to fix." The world slowed. Daniel saw his best friend, his brother in all but blood, ready to kill him, and something inside him snapped. As Michael swung, Daniel lunged forward, grabbing the duffel bag at his feet. His hands closed around the cold handle of the spray paint can. With a desperate scream, he slammed it upward into Michael's jaw. The blow stunned him. The crowbar clattered to the pavement. Daniel didn't hesitate. He grabbed it, his hands trembling, and held it up between them. Michael's lip bled, his grin twisted. "You gonna do it, Danny? You gonna kill me?" Tears blurred Daniel's eyes. "Don't make me." But Michael lunged again, his hands clawing for the weapon. Instinct took over. Daniel swung. The sound was sickening, a crack that split the night. Michael staggered back, eyes wide with shock, before collapsing into the snow. Blood pooled beneath his head, stark red against the white. Daniel dropped the crowbar, his whole body shaking. His breaths came ragged, his chest heaving with horror and relief in something he couldn't name. Mr. Willard, hearing the commotion, turned from his car. His eyes widened as he saw the two boys. "Daniel? Michael? What happened?" Daniel fell to his knees in the snow, sobbing. "He was going to kill you. He already killed someone. Please, you have to believe me." The sheriff came later, lights flashing against the dark school walls. Michael's body lay still under a blanket of falling snow, while Daniel sat in the back of the cruiser, his notebook clutched in his shaking hands. He gave them everything: the mill, the drifter, the threats, the truth he'd carried like a stone in his chest. Some believed him, some didn't, but the evidence in the mill, the body they uncovered, the words he'd written in his notebook, they were enough. Enough to clear Daniel, enough to reveal Michael for what he had become. In the weeks that followed, Ashwood changed. The quiet little town carried the weight of what had been hidden among them, the story of the golden boy who turned into a killer, and the friend who stopped him. Daniel carried it too, for the rest of his life. Years later, he would still see Michael's face in dreams, hear his laughter on summer nights. He would still wonder if he could have saved him before the darkness swallowed him whole. But in the end, Daniel knew one thing with certainty. The boy he had once called his best friend had chosen his path long before that snowy night. And Daniel had chosen his. He had chosen to survive.